Mr. Schweitzer. This is Carl Yannig. I am going to send you uh, some photo, just a segment, a start of a proposed presentation. There'll be a lot of mistakes in this, but you can hopefully be able to synchronize the photographs with me talking. You'll have to advise me on how we can communicate to when I change the slide. So this is just a trial run and just to show you what I have on this end, and I'm certainly open to many suggestions, but I think we might be able to work this out. So, without further ado, I'll just act like I'm starting here. Hello, everybody. It's good to be with you. I am here to try to give a presentation on early man in the New World. This will be from a standpoint of local early man, people in southwestern Kentucky and central Tennessee and western Tennessee. And so I have 5 Clovis sites in Christian County, Kentucky that has been given the name of the Little River Clovis Complex. This idea came from Dr. Richard Michael Gramley of Massachusetts, and I've worked with him for about 30 years now, I guess, and he is a very a good advisor. We're wanting to look at some of the entries into the New World. This is slide 2. This is not the slide I will use, Dr. Schweitzer, but we want to look at the coming to America through the corridor from the west out of Siberia, down through Alaska and Canada into the United States, and then points southward. And also there's an eastern entry proposed by the late Dr. Dennis Stanford and Bruce Bradley on crossing Atlantic ice. And I'll have more to say about that whenever we do the real thing. Next slide. This comes from David Anderson. He has, and some others have written a book about the Paleo and early Archaic of the Southeast. And it shows some of the general hypothesized staging areas in the early colonization of the New World. And I've got over to the right there Little River site, but apparently that will take in some of Humphreys and Benton County, Tennessee, the Carson Con Short site, which is well publicized and is only probably by the crow flies 40 or 50 miles from the Christian County site. There are some in northern Alabama. The other ones up above the Little River is farther north than I'm concerned about, probably some in Ohio, Coshocton County. I am in contact with a man by the name of Mark Pape out of Ohio that has found what seems to be a virgin site where it hadn't been plowed in who knows how long, and he is finding some very interesting pieces there made out of, I guess, Upper Mercer Church. Next slide. This also is from Dr. Anderson's book, and it shows, if you can see the outline of Christian County, it's talking about artifact densities, and you can see south of Christian County there in northern Alabama, also some very productive early man sites. Next slide. When we think of prehistory or the prehistoric period, we're talking about time before there was any written records. I will mention more about this in the side about the cultures. But at this time, no one knows who these people were individually. They were just categorized by their lifestyles and strategies of obtaining food. Anthropology comes from two Greek words, man and study of, logos and anthropos, and this is the study of man in all aspects of human life and culture. Our culture is defined as the integrated pattern of human behavior that includes thought and speech and action and artifacts, which is all that we have basically to deal with these early periods, and depends upon man and his capacity for learning and transmitting knowledge to succeeding generations. Now, artifact is anything man-made. Perhaps many of you have found Indian relics or artifacts, and this is a conservancy, the way I understand it. And Mr. Schweitzer, you'll have to tell me about how to say this here. But the Nashville Conservancy is trying to make it known about the preservation of things man-made. Now, locally, the artifacts that we find mostly is Hopkinsville Church. Hopkinsville Church is a cryptocrystalline, flint-like stone that comes in tabular or nodular form and often has concentric banding and weathers to a tan or light gray color. I'll have some pictures of this church in situ later on. Hopkinsville Church was given the name by Dr. Ken Tankersley in 1989. It originates in the St. Genevieve limestone formation, which comes in nodular and tabular form and often displays concentric banding. It varies in color from dark blue to gray and tan and can weather to much lighter coloration, as I mentioned above. The Clovis master knappers were able to reduce the Hopkinsville chert, which were locked in tough spheroids or cannonballs, as efficiently as a napper today using a diamond saw. And Mr. Schweitzer, I want to say that I'm hoping to get in contact with Ryan Parrish out of Memphis, and we're going to throw in some of the Tennessee church as well here or somewhere down the line. Now, there are four main Indian cultures in the literature. When you think of prehistory as opposed to history, when we think of history, we think of Indian tribes, like perhaps the Shawnee or the Aztec, or the Sioux, or the Apache. There's all kinds and many, many different people, many different languages. Linguistics is a study of words going back in time where they can see where different tribes split off from one another, and that's most interesting, but this is way beyond the scope of this presentation. But when we think of the Indian cultures, we don't think of people, of tribes, or of names like Sitting Bull, or Tecumseh, or Geronimo. They've been a lot of, or Pontiac, there've been a lot of Indians historically. So we need to differentiate between culture and prehistory and, of course, history, which are written in books. First, we have the Paleo-Indian, which normally is around 12,000 BC to about 6,000 BC, that is before Christ. I know Dr. Gramley mentions that man being probably in the New World from around 15,000 years before present, so it's not too far off here. But these people were big game hunters and were pretty nomadic. And it seems like that the people here in Christian County were pretty, I don't know if they're sedentary or not, but they had so much material and so much water and so much game that probably a great place to live, as would have been Middle Tennessee. You've got the Red River and other Harpeth River and other rivers in Tennessee, the Cumberland, which, of course, the Little River drains into the Cumberland. But these people, no doubt, had ideal living places. The archaic is a Greek word meaning old, and if you'll notice, there's a transition or an overlap between the Paleo and the archaic from about 8,000 BC to about the time of Christ. And these are the shell mound builders and hunters and gatherers. The woodland goes from about 80 to about 1000 AD, and they were hunter and gatherers. And then we got the Mississippian, which from about 1000 AD up until about the time of European contact. They were farmers and hunters and gatherers. And there are mound builders in Tennessee and some in Kentucky and northern Ohio. Probably the one of the more well-known is the Cahokia Mound up around St. Louis in western Illinois, I guess, across the river from St. Louis, around Collinsville. And also there's some mound builders down in Alabama and Mississippi and other places. So that generally gives you an idea of what we're talking about. Now I'm going to give here Mr. Schweitzer hopefully a synopsis of what Gramley, he's gone to Montana, and it'll be a while before I can get this. But he just over the phone told me some things that I need to tape and write down. But I like the way he presents things. I mentioned Hopkinsville Church a while ago. Here's an example I found in 1989 or so, and in 1988. I gave it to Dr. Gramley. He donated it to the Buffalo Museum of Science. I'll show you a certificate in a minute. You can see how big it is. This is like a big orange. You got the rind, and then you got the meat on the inside, and these people were able to knock that off. I knocked that off myself. That it's black. A lot of times we have some blue. As we said, patinates into gray and brown. Here's another example. I think I knocked off 14 or 15 blades off of this. So instead of getting one spear point out of this for tools, using the blade technology, which I'll refer to later, it is how that they could save material. You could probably get 3 or 4 feet of material out of this one rock, or at least 2 feet. Now on the left is an artifact that was made by the late Bob Patton of Lakewood, Colorado, a suburb of Denver. He made this at the First World Summit Conference on the Peopling of the Americas in 1989 out of a slab of Hopkinsville Church about the size of my hand. I have the channel flakes to this piece, but it's modern made, and he has carved his initials in there so that people will not get mixed up with the real things, which is a bane in archaeology today, especially among collectors, because there are a lot of fakes or prefabrications or fabrications. So, yeah. On the right is a real blade core coming from the Boyd Ledford site here in Christian County, and certainly gives us ties, many think, to Europe, to Siberia, I mean, not Siberia, to Spain and France. Now here is a gully that empties into the little river. You can see if you look real closely in the foreground, and we've opened up one of these nodules, it just appears in the foreground. Now here that people, the early Americans, the Aborigines, had their water. Game was all around. They still are now. I see deer all the time. Also, you've got your material here. And in this gully, there is scads and scads of debris where early Americans have flaked off. This is looking up into it from the opposite direction. Here you see a man's shoe and some of the nodules that's there in the limestone. And of course, this is very important to the early Americans and why we're here. Here's a picture of Little River. Over to the left is the Boyd Ledford site. Here is another scene in the fall up the river from where I live. So I will close with that, Mr. Schweitzer, and I will try to send this. And we'll hopefully be able to work from there. Thank you.